السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وارنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من اهلي هارون أخي اشدد به أزري وأشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا. وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين آمين. Now we are at the beginning of the real message that we will get from the story of the prophet Moses. Real message means really the aspect of this story which looks to our life directly right now and directly related to us. Before starting the introduction of this section of the message of these stories, I would like to tell one thing, one point. If somebody wants to understand the gist of the message of the Quran, especially in our relationship with our environment, the other members of the society, and conveying the message to others, sharing the message to others, but never forgetting what our responsibilities are, personal responsibilities, especially the responsibility of worshiping God. The best explanations are to be found in the story of the prophets. That is amazing to me that the story of the prophets are reduced to their historical side of it, historical connections, and not related to our life. That's why we like the prophetic stories, because of the different messages we get from the stories of the prophets, but not related to our personal life and social life right now. This is, if this aspect of the stories are not taken, they are not really very important, because a third of the Quran consists of the prophetic stories. If you include the chapters of the Quran, which are quite long chapters of the Quran, especially Medina period revelations, which are the a little bit more detailed explanations of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, directly related to his life conditions, especially when very severe relationship with the enemies of the message those events are not to be seen, none of the stories of the Quran to be taken for their historical context at all. But we can think about the first practices of the effect of these narrations directly related to our life, but we find the examples of these practices during the first receivers of these messages, the life of the people who firsthand received the message and practiced in their life. We have to take all these examples as templates. It means we have to use them as an example which took place at a certain time within a certain living conditions of the prophet and his friends, every prophet and their followers, and their also opponents. In their life, living conditions, we have to take it into consideration in order to transfer these examples into our practical life. That is what really reveals all the beauty of the message, the very essence of the message into our life. We keep telling that in this story, in this series of the stories of the prophet every time, because usually among the readers of the Quran, these stories are related to certain historical context and analyzed these message within that context without bringing to our practical life. That is why, for example, we are going to study the phase of the story of Moses after they crossed the sea and they are running away from the Pharaoh's administration or tyrant's administration. And all the stories are told, this is something to do with the children of Israel. Literally, the Quran also used children of Israel as in its literally, children of Israel is mentioned as Beni Israel in the Quran. Yes, we understand that this example has been practiced during the children of Israel life, or in their life, but how about us here? When we take it into, when we try to bring it into our life, we studied before that children of Israel in the Quran represent the followers of a prophet. Followers of, it means anybody who identifies his understanding of religion with a prophet, which is called community in Arabic, ummah. So the ummah, who is the ummah here? The Moses' ummah. But it is told during the life of the prophet, and in its historical context, this section of the Quran was revealed on the around 10th century of the message. It means, 10th year of the message. It means just 3 years before the migration to Medina, but 1 year after the boycott. Now, as the boycott, we mentioned earlier briefly, the Mecca administrators prohibited the inhabitants or the citizens of the city of Mecca not to have anything to do with. No one sold anything, no one bought anything from them. They were left almost to starvation. But of course, they were buying the things from other tribes, neighboring tribes. But of course, it was very costly, not with the market price, but very high price. They suffered a lot. The boycott continued 3 years. After the boycott, something happened and the boycott was lifted and the people came back into their normal life. And the prophet was revealed this chapter Taha. Lots of narrations about the practical life of the previous prophets mentioned there in these stories. Now we are reading this story here from the same chapter related to Moses. There are different sections of it, but this section is related to children of Israel. Of course, we know that the Prophet Muhammad and his followers and his friends did not experience the life of Medina yet. After 3 years, they will go to Medina and will experience the life of Medina, where there were Jewish people. It means the children of Israel. Some of them, not all of them, of course, a part of them, living along in the vicinity of Medina, have any experience of the, as we now learned from the Quran, that the people of the book, it means Christians and Jews, and maybe to some scholars, Zoroastrians. But still, the story of children of Israel were heavily told in this chapter. The reason, because their life were prepared by God when they go to Medina, because the people didn't know that they were going to move, migrate into Medina, but they didn't know. They didn't know which kind of people the children of Israel were. But at the same time, they were prepared for it, not to have a physical connection with them, but their experience, how they practiced their relationship with their prophets, so their minds were prepared by the one who sent the Quran. It means God. But the children didn't know. The people didn't know. Maybe the prophet also didn't know that 3 years later they will move into Medina and faced with these people. But because the point is not to prepare themselves how to deal with the children of Israel. No, it is not a problem. The problem is, as the Quran presents it, how the followers of a previous prophet had the experience of the people, so that it is taught to the prophet and the followers. Look, they did this, it was wrong, it was right. Don't do the thing that they did wrong, and do the things that they did right, as it is approved in the Quran. Of course, the things they did are not mentioned very much because they are already being trained through the Quran. But of course, what they did was wrong. Then they had to prepare themselves beforehand. That was the preparation, and also uh, an, uh, an encouragement for the first audience of the Quran that you have to be careful in your relationship with your prophet, with your messenger, because the previous people were human beings like you. They did this and this, this and this, and they were wrong. You shouldn't do the same thing. Now, that was the message for them. How about us? The same thing. Although they were with the prophet, those first audience were with the prophet, of course, this example that we are going to study, which is said 40 years in the historical information, they went through the desert for 40 years until they reached their promised land by God. What we understand from it, the point is not physically moving from one place to another, and that is our land, we settle down here and everything finished. No, because this word is the word of training. It is interesting. There is no resting without receiving any training, any education in this world. So when they reach their promised land, we understand the promised land, although physically the children of Israel themselves describe it as this land, which is called now Palestine. Some part of it nowadays called Israel, but Palestine. Palestine, they said it is the historically people understood it as the promised land. But what we understand from this story, it has nothing to do with Palestine. It has nothing to do with one part of the land, but it is a journey under the leadership of the prophet, which the community of Muhammad, the prophet Muhammad, and the messenger of God and his people will practice in Medina under the leadership of the prophet Muhammad. He was the ruler. He was appointed by the people, local people. They wanted him. He didn't want, they wanted him to be the ruler of their community, although they were not Muslims. They were only 60 people were Muslims, but population was around, historians say 5,000. 60 people is a negligible number. But they appreciated Muhammad. We talked about it a lot, why they appreciated the message of the Muhammad, not because they believed in it first, but they had the similar example in the life of the Jewish people. It means the children of Israel, Jews. Jews were much, much more advanced people at that time than the Bedouin, pagan, Medina Arab population, which made the majority of the community. So as they understood that Muhammad was claiming the same thing as the Jewish people's prophet claimed, they said, okay, it is one of us, let us appoint him as our commander, as our leader or administrator, so that we will be like children of Israel. It means Jews. So we will also develop our life. It is an worldly concern among the first, among the pagan of the Medina population. Pagan Arabs, mostly. It was a worldly concern, but it turned out to be a good experience, an opportunity for them that they will also receive the message of the prophet. So before prophet moved, when also migrated into Medina, I'm using the word wrongly, immigrated into Medina, there, what which kind of relationship they will have in that society is prepared in the minds of the people who received the message. Now, we can bring this story into our life and saying that, look, now, for example, the dominant culture of the world is not really following the message of any prophetic message or God's message. Dominant, although people claim that they are Christians, Muslims, and Jews and Buddhists, the major religions, Hindus, of course, major followers of the major religions, they claim to follow a religion, but this is just an, if you like, political, social identity, rather than their way of life. Their way of life is based on mostly secular system, secular education, secular system, secularism is the most dominant culture in this world. So we have to also take lesson from these messages of the stories of the prophet. In a secular society, how am I going to arrange my relationship with the message of the prophets so that I will arrange my message, my life accordingly? That was the training they were having through these stories. Then the prophet and his friends were taking notice of all these aspects of the stories. But later on, these stories, during the later generations, these stories became a historical story, not the present day people of the prophet, first-hand receivers of the message. That is interesting. We have to take it in the same way as we are reading the Quran now. This is for me right now. It is not a history. So I can put myself as one member of the children of Israel, and I can see that my prophet now that I am expected to follow was Muhammad rather than Moses. So we can change it this. Moses, instead of Moses, say Muhammad, and the children of Israel, it means the Ummah of Muhammad. We can replace it. Muhammad and his Ummah and his followers. So read it accordingly. When we read this, we will realize that as the story tells us about the children of Israel in Egypt, our previous life looks like this: physical slavery under the dominant civilization. Now, we may receive the message. After receiving the message, understanding the miraculous content of the message, as Moses took the people through the sea, and the army of the Pharaoh were altogether thrown into the sea and punished because they were physically oppressing the children of Israel. It means followers of a prophet. Let's generalize it. Physically oppressing the followers of the prophet. Now they are relieved from this physical slavery. Of course, comparatively, relieving yourself from the physical slavery is much easier than your egoistic slavery. Now, under the guidance of the message that you receive from or through any messenger, then what we have to do now, okay, let's say the first time I encountered seriously, although culturally I may come from a Muslim background, etc., but I have reached the age of 16, 15, 16, 17 in my later teenage period. I decided that I am going to investigate this religion. Now, maybe Christianity, maybe Islam, maybe another religion. When you do that, that is the beginning of your spiritual journey. Now, physical journey is very easy as compared to this one. And it is narrated in the history, this spiritual journey, spiritual cleansing your ambitions or self-centric concerns and going into a relationship between you and your God directly and living your practical life according to this relationship, which is called worship, worshiping God alone. That purification of worship is extremely important. How am I going to not pollute my relationship with my Creator, which is called worship, worshiping my God alone? How am I going to this pollution to clean it, purify it? And the examples shows us it is a journey which will take place 40 years. Now, how am I going to not get frustrated with this 40 years? No, it takes gradually. It is a gradual development. Be careful. Just you need to be consistent. You cannot really become perfect, clean perfectly in one day, 1 year. Like our education here, we start from a very early age of 4, 5 until 24, 30, some people 40 years, and still education never ends. It is the education we take in order to, if you like, in quote unquote, perfect our life. We don't say that, oh, it has been 20 years, 30 years. We don't say it. But spiritual journey continues until reaching the promised land. What is the promised land in the Quran? Everything in the Quran is told, it can be summarized that God is promising you eternal happiness. That is your promised land, paradise. It means education through the revelation takes place until we die. Because before we die, we cannot really reach the promised land. But we can slowly prepare our spirit, our soul, to become eligible for this promised life, life of this promised land, paradise, so that we will be living in the presence of our Creator. But this is not difficult at all, but at the same time, we are human beings. We forget. We are fallible human beings. No one is perfect in the life period. Of course, our original, if you like, nature is perfect. It means potentially we are created with the perfect tools to reach this promised land. This potentiality is perfect, but this potentiality needs to be transformed into practical perfection in the physical form, which means I have to revive this potentiality which is latent within me. It waits to be like a seed. Seed has the potentiality to become a tree or plant, but it has to go through certain gradual perfection, development, so that it will start giving the fruit, and so that it will start experiencing the promised land of God. That is how the universe is created, how the things around us is created, and everybody is born, every living being is born and grow, and then mature, and then leave this old land and move into the promised land. That is how we are, giving the examples in the world. And our very life also is an example for this. Now we are going to do this after realizing we are going to go through this journey, if you like, spiritual perfection journey, which is called in Islamic literature, Al-Insan al-Kamil, Insan al-Kamil. So, Al-Insan al-Kamil means who is ready to experience the life in the promised land, because in the promised land, there is no mistake, there is no harm, there is nothing that we cannot really obtain. But in order to be able to gain this status, we have to educate ourselves seriously. So what we are going to read here, the examples of where we can fall, so that the warning is there. As far as the example of the children of Israel demonstrates us, we should be careful. We should be careful not to fall the same mistake as the children of Israel, the followers of the prophet, made in their life. That's why we have to prepare ourselves, knowing that receiving the freedom in our spirit is longer, more difficult, needs more attention than receiving the freedom for our body. Now, Moses came and at one night took the children of Israel after establishing the trust in them that he is really, he won the scientists of Moses, Pharaoh, I'm sorry, scientists of Pharaoh, they understood that this man is really a man who deserves to be trusted, trustworthy man. And then he called them one night, we are moving now, one night. They moved, we studied that, and they went through a very difficult stage, which is called going through the sea, represented there, symbolized there, going through the sea, where the battle was won by the Moses and his followers, and the Pharaoh and his followers were defeated. Now, you are ready now because you are free from physical freedom. Sorry, slavery, physical slavery, bodily slavery. Now you have to save, free, gain freedom in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit. That journey is harsh because we always try to compromise and keep forgetting. And also, there are many excuses we justify for ourselves in order not to submit ourselves completely to our Creator. It means not with, of course, spiritually submit means instead of my desires, God's will is going to be followed, not my desire. I will use my will in order to follow God's will. When, as much as possible, as much as I can. As I start learning something, I learn stage by stage, and on top of each other, all together makes my last stage. That is the same thing in spiritual education, stage by stage. So we have to be patient and persistent in following the education. We should not be really disappointed when we don't get the end, the top, very soon in a couple of years or 3 years of studying the Quran. No. It is nothing to do with studying the Quran as we want to reach the perfection, human perfection, perfecting our spirit, cleaning or purifying our pollution. Of course, for example, studying the Quran depends. Why do you study the Quran? In order to become a sheikh or a community leader, or you study the Quran to be proud of your knowledge. There are many other options that we may follow. So this journey is going to be, the option of this journey is going to be purifying your egoistic, egocentric concerns, submitting yourself to your Creator directly, and establishing your relationship with your Creator in the form of only worshipful attitude to Him. It means I know my status here as a created being. I know your status also there as the creator. So I owe everything I have to you. You are the owner. I am only benefiting from it. In a summary, in a nutshell, what worship is. I am in my, in, I exist. It doesn't mean that I'm going to use an expression. I am nothing. It means I have no say for what is good, what is bad. But all you have it, not I have. I am nothing, you are everything. Although you have given me something, this is all, these are all from you. That is worship. Acknowledge it. And I am going to use it in order to acknowledge you, that you are the one who created this feeling in me, this desire in me. You are the one who created it. So I am obliged to you. I'm thankful to you. That is what is expected from us. Humanly, is it possible? Not 100%, but at least we have to aim at reaching the 100% perfection. We have to go there, try to go there, in that direction at least. Make progress every day. How small steps we take a day doesn't matter, but we have to make the progress constantly increasing. That should be our aim. Let's see briefly what happened to the children of Israel. It means to us, what may happen to us during this journey of spiritual freedom, if you like. Okay, let's start. Bismillah. Chapter Taha, verse 80. All right. Now, O children of Israel, we delivered you from your enemy. Now, physical blessings, favor from the creator, from our God, is mentioned us, and we are reminded this. Look, you are giving your body, you are giving your existence, you are giving your feelings, so you are giving your the belongings that you have in this world, the universe. God has been delivering us from there. We have to acknowledge it. It is the easiest stage. For example, I am breathing now because I am in need of air, because my lungs, I need a lung, it is given. I am breathing air, it is given. My lungs must clean the air and blood through this air, it is provided. It means these physical things are all provided by our Creator. We have to accept this, because the salvage of the children of Israel from Egypt into the desert is a blessing from God. Why? They went through the sea, impossible for any person they can do it. Any person can do it in this world. It was the miracle created by Allah through the messenger Moses. It means, represents that this is the physical freedom realized by God. Now, God is reminding them now, look, I am giving you the air you need, the body you need, the power you need in your body, the light you need, life you need, You are all needy, pure needy, 100% needy. I am giving them. Do you notice that? If you say, no, 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 it's not you who is the creator of the universe, but it's something else, somebody else. Show me. That education is in the other parts of the Quran. But here, just a brief reminder saying, all the followers of a prophet, we delivered you from your needs so that you will be, otherwise you would be slave of those things, and you are not slave now. I am freely giving them. Okay, freedom, physical freedom is given by our creator. And we made a covenant with you. Now, I'm not following the rest of the verse yet. It is too much. We made a covenant with you. Did we? I don't know. I don't remember. But we made. It means in your physical freedom, you have qualities given to you that are able to acknowledge their creator. This is the covenant within us, which is called the Ruh in Arabic, in the Quranic language, spirit, soul. That is what it's what is called this covenant. It means we can acknowledge our creator with the spirit. When the spirit is created in us, this consciousness of our human qualities are able to acknowledge and understand what is right, what is wrong, and acknowledge that all the things are given to me. And the one who gave them to me cannot be anything of this universe. That is the covenant. This is symbolized in the Quran as when we created the spirit, we asked them, etc., who your Lord is, that the spirit, your spirit, human spirit answered, you are our Lord. That is the covenant. Classically, this example of the Quran is taken for this. Of course, we should understand that human side of us is able to acknowledge who my creator is. That is the covenant. Now let's come, this covenant means I have no excuse that I don't know who you are. No, I know. I have the ability who the originator, creator of my life is. I know. I can question it. So we made the covenant with you on the right hand side of the mount. What is this mount? Yeah, what is this mount coming up with at Tur? Now let's go back to the other side of other aspects of the Moses' story. When Moses was in the wilderness, he saw a light, and the light, he wanted to take it, he needed, and as he was trying to take the light, and God spoke to him. Look at the symbolic teachings, it's very interesting. When human being acknowledges that he needs a guide in order to transfer this potentiality into practical ability, so that I will learn it. I can learn, but I have to study. Now, when I start or decide to study, I understand, that I must need a guidance. It means teacher. Who is my teacher in the wilderness? It is my land. This is my life. Who can be my teacher? Then God says, I am your teacher. Come to me. It means, physically, we are not expecting a voice coming to me, but we understand that God is going to employ me as a representative, as a messenger of the message he is going to reveal to me. So even if not, I am not a prophet, but I know that there are prophets, and I know that I can get the message from them. I have no excuse. It is a beautiful understanding to me. I can learn this message from the Creator. That is the example of Moses' life. Now, God is reminding them that I have made an covenant with you on the right-hand side of the mountain. It means not only with Moses, although verbal message is I have transferred to him, but he will transfer the same message to you. You are included in the covenant now. But we understand that covenant is in our spirit, in our inner potentiality, and also a covenant made with receiving the message through the prophets, because the addressee of this example is children of Israel, which means the followers of a prophet. So the follower of a prophet is also means that they have received the message through the prophet. It means you and me now, we have received the message from the prophet. Now we have to study, we have to put it into our practical life. That is our covenant. Now, Tur, for example, later on in other parts of the Quran, it will come into the, again, discussion into the subject that when the children of Israel signed the covenant with the prophet, with their prophet, the mountain rose up above them. It means the sense of responsibility of receiving the message from the Creator within ourselves, and also through verbal explanation of how am I going to use it. This heavy responsibility is signed by my existence. Although he gave me the existence, but I am conscious of it. Now, I have to be aware of this heavy responsibility, because my body needs to be created. My human side are all created, because there is no other way for me that I have gained them through these sources or those sources. And I realized that the verbal explanation of the message has arrived me. Now I am a student of this message, and I am subject to educate my soul and live accordingly, so that I will be free from worshiping any false, fake excuses that I may say, I need this, and the water is quenching me, etc. I will say, oh, it is employed by my Creator. Welcome, water. I will drink you by knowing that this is from my Creator. For typical example. So that signing the studentship, if you like, with the message of the prophet is a huge, heavy responsibility. Can you run away from it? No. No one, although the students complain that I have to study, I have to do the homework, my assignments, and I have to go to school, listen to the teacher, not keep myself with texting, uh, busy with texting to my friends, and also sit for a test at the end of the class, etc. But everybody wants to go to school and receive education and perfection. That is one side of the covenant, that everybody is given this need, and God prepared it for us. We have to follow it. We have to follow this uh, covenant now with God. So, do you understand the right side of Mount? Now, and also heavy responsibility from one side, from another side, where the Moses was trained by God in the mountain while he was meeting with God. I mean, not God personally, but his voice. But these are all symbolic things, descriptions of our covenant, because we receive instruction. Moses, in the example of the Quran, Moses received instruction how it is going to use his tool, his stuff. It means any tool that we are practicing here is profession, is our profession. How am I going to utilize it and turn it into a miraculous demonstration of God's power, God's knowledge? How am I going to transfer it? That is what Moses was trained there. So he practiced this training in front of his confrontation with Pharaoh. Again, used the same stuff and won over all interpretation of the scientists of that time. That is how he was trained. So we are also trained through this education that we receive from revelation, which is transferred to us by the prophets. So we have to combine them together and understand that, yes, really, our physical freedom has been provided by our Creator, and also the message which teaches us how to develop, improve our spirit is also a blessing from our Creator. Again, God made it, and we made in our existence, in our quality, a covenant, signed a covenant with the Creator, saying that, yes, I understand. I am your Creator. Now, at that moment, the spiritual journey starts. It means we are enrolled with the school now. We are a student. Now, what will happen? Okay. And we sent down to you el manna and quails. It means all what you need for your livelihood, we are preparing them. Don't worry about what am I going to do if I study, for example, sociology, if I study philosophy. I cannot make money out of it. No, don't worry. Don't worry. If you study graphics, etc., you become a very talented man and make a good money, with a very good money. Don't worry about it. Your manna and quails, it means manna represents all sorts of plant productions, and quails represents animal products. It means your vegetables, your meat, and every kind of them are prepared for me. Don't worry about it. But carry on your progress. It means, how am I going to now prepare myself for the graduation so that I will reach the promised land, which is paradise? So in order to gain the paradise, what am I supposed to do? I have to concentrate on my worship rather than on my worldly concerns, as if I'm going to make my life. So the time is up, but I didn't know that really we would be able to finish the first verse. I thought today, I think we can only do the introduction, but roughly to prepare our mind, and we started the education, receiving the education in the first word, Taha, verse 80. So this uh, description of the presentation of this journey, spiritual journey, by practiced by the children of Israel in the example of the Quran. So we can say that it is directly related to me. I am, as I know now that the Prophet Muhammad has received the message, or if someone is a Christian, if he knows that Jesus was a prophet employed by God and receiving the message from him and transferring it to him, he has to go through this education. He has to go through the education of this revelation that he receives from his prophet. But while we are doing this, we should remember that we had a covenant with God. It means I am potentially prepared to fulfill the requirements of this message. So I have no excuse. Physically, I am free. I can be free. And also mentally, psychologically, spiritually, I have to gain the freedom by educating myself through the school of this prophetic message. Now we are in it, and we are reminded that don't worry about your food, don't worry about your clothing, it will come. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but don't leave the message aside or behind and concentrate on worldly purposes only, then you will lose it. That is what the reminder is in the first verse. So, inshallah, the second verse, eat from the good things we have provided for you, but don't overstep the bounds. What is that? What is this overstepping the bounds? Now we have to study this next week, inshallah. So what is this overstepping the bounds represent here for me right now? Otherwise, you will receive the wrath of God. What does it mean? This is another reminder for me that if I am aware of the revelation, and if I don't really study it seriously and educate myself through the teachings of the revelation, I am warned that I may be lost in something, doing something wrong. Okay, inshallah, this is the subject of next week. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين بحرمة السر سورة الفاتحة.